Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. It's a sad day. We're losing a friend of ours. Julia Glanz is here to tell us about her new opportunity in her career. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's good to be back.
So I pick up the paper one day and I see that Jake Day is leaving. And that makes me kind of sad, but it's like, okay, we'll get through this. And then I realize, oh no, Jack Heath's going to be the mayor, and he's been such a great stability guy on the council for a long time. So that makes me sad. While I'm glad he's mayor, I'm going to miss him on the council. And then I pick up the paper, and Barbara Duncan, our police chief, is leaving. And then I get settled out from that. And now I learn that Julia Glanz is leaving for greener pastures. Julia, what's going on?
Well, a lot of change in a short amount of time. I will, recognize that. We all have to. But they're all really good things. Obviously, the mayor leaving was a big blow to the community, but I think we all saw that one coming.
Right.
Excited to have Jack in the role. He's doing great. Barb, 13 years. My gosh.
How does anyone do that job for 13 years? Yeah.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
The average, lifespan, so to speak, of a chief of police is about 5 years. So she did quite well. And, it's time for her to enjoy life and not have to answer the phone in the middle of the night. And for me, it was a tough decision, but I was presented with an opportunity I certainly couldn't turn down to work on developing my future and being able to make an impact in a different way statewide.
So you're going to the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. What will you do there?
So I'm going to be one of the assistant secretaries. So for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be gobbling up as much information as I can, learning about state government in a new way, learning about how we can impact housing policy, reduce homelessness, affordability issues, you name it. This has all happened really fast, so I'm still it's still a little bit up in the air. What the day-to-day is going to look like and portfolio, but I'm just excited to take on a new challenge.
Now, in my history, when my bosses have left, I'm more than happy to go to the door and wave to them. And the last thing I want to do is get in the car and go with them. So what is the unique situation here between you and your boss?
Well, I think most people know that Jake and I have a long-standing relationship, a very close relationship. We have a great time together. We trust one another. We've got each other's back. He left me in charge of the city when he went to go fight in Africa. It's a deep bond. So it's the idea of me going with him has been something we've played around with for a long time when this was an abstract idea. And so I was just grateful to get the opportunity to continue working with him. It's been a pleasure to work with him for 8 years. He was my professor before then. So we're just on to the next task.
One of the themes of the show is I'm wrong about everything. So when we all knew Jake was going to leave, we thought Peter Franchot was going to get elected and Jake would go with Peter. Mm-hmm. And people would say, in social groups, they'd say, well, if Jake goes, then Julia's going to go. And I'd say, no, Julia is going to really blossom without Jake like breathing down her neck all the time. She's going to be here to really run things. She could succeed him as mayor. This is going to open up all kinds of possibilities for her. Him leaving is going to be the greatest thing ever for Julia. And again, I'm wrong. Or am I right, just in a different way?
I think it's just different. It's certainly been a quieter couple of weeks without him around as Jack's getting into his role, and there's certainly a different leadership style there. So the team is adjusting to that. But it's been weird not having Jake around as well, and just trying to get reoriented. But knowing that I was leaving, it's still been this odd phenomenon I'm dealing with. But it was not an easy decision for me to make. I absolutely adore this community. It is my home. It's going to stay our home for the foreseeable future. I went to school here. I grew up as an adult here, really had some challenging opportunities with the city, and I'm so grateful for it.
Again, because I'm wrong about everything, when you first got into this job, under Jim Ireton, basically, I did not see you progressing as confidently and as well as you did. I really wondered if you had the diplomatic skills. And where I remember,
Well, thanks, Greg.
where I remember again standing there going, I'm wrong about another thing here, was when there was the Station 1 incident.
Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. The Station 1 incident, and the firefighters were sort of in a rebellion phase. You were there as part of that, and I could see how the firefighters, the paid city fire and volunteers at Station 1 looked at you, looked at the mayor, had complete confidence in what you guys were doing. And if you can win those people over, and if you can win over the police officers in that group and be their boss, which you were able to do, to me, that's got to be the ultimate compliment in your leadership ability. So did you recognize that, or did you always know it was going to go that easily?
Oh, I don't think so. It's certainly been a challenge at times. I think that day, the day we got the letter that Station 1 was seceding,
right,
was my first day as city administrator.
I think it was.
Officially.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
I remember getting called into the mayor's office and dealing with that. And so that second day was the press conference.
And, and just everyone's kind of looking at you like, all right, she's going to have to be the hammer on this thing. Yeah. All the politicians are going to. They're not going to want to get their feet dirty with all this stuff. They're going to let her be the hammer. Mm-hmm. But go ahead, sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, just that too, there's been other challenging moments. The conversations around race across the country, hasn't been an easy conversation with our police department. But I think at the end of the day, the police department and the fire department know that I've got their back, even if we're going to disagree sometimes on some big issues. But, their safety is number one, their mental health, all of those things. I was at the police department this morning and, talking about the search process for a new chief, and it's a tough crowd, but I think they know that we've got their best interests at heart, and we want what's best for them. But they've certainly given me some gray hairs over the years. You can see them here, but I'm grateful for everything that they've done for this community.
Yeah,
continue to do.
They're a tough crowd because they've got a hard job to do,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a way to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like the rest of us don't understand what their job
Mm-hmm.
is, and they definitely don't want people like you and me telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely understand
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, we want the positive stuff that they want as well.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough balance. So making sure you've got strong leaders in the organization, and we're lucky enough to have both strong leadership at the fire department and the police department that help guide our decision making. Again, we're civilians. We don't know what those lives are like, but with the recommendations from their team, listening to them, we've always had an open door policy with officers and firefighters, all employees, so they don't shy away from telling us how they feel.
What'll be your favorite moment? I know I have had some moments during your tenure with Jake and you being in charge where I thought the city was really doing great things. Do you have a moment where it's kind of all came together and you were standing there going, all right, this is good?
So I'm curious what yours are to help me remember some of mine, but it's gone by fast, and I think this week taken some time to slow down and think through some of those things, and after Friday, I think a lot of those memories are going to come rushing back, but I think a lot of them are around, sort of the culture of our city, how we welcome folks here in a different way than I think we have in the past. Obviously, folk festival memories and walking down Division Street. Pride Parade was a big one for me personally. There's been a ton, but just the little moments of taking care of our team, having tough conversations with employees that just need an ear, and advising them, or just listening, is what I'm going to remember.
How hard was the pandemic?
It was. Looking back, we're years beyond it now.
Looking back, it's like, what? We were all excited about that thing.
It wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
But it was a challenge, especially early on when we were trying to determine, when nobody knew what was going on. And I think there was a little bit of lack of information from certain agencies that, in other communities may have spoken up a little louder. So we tried to fill that void. And I think we did a really good job in that. And I'm really proud of that work. But it was tough. I couldn't really, Jake was gone. I had couldn't really turn off my brain about it. I was really stressed. Started going to therapy then, which I highly recommend for everybody.
I just drank more.
Oh, there was that. I baked.
You were baking a lot then, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've balanced that out in my life now a little bit more. But worrying about our team and worrying about our community, that weighed really heavily on me, and a lot of sleepless nights.
But what I saw was, completely untested environment, uneducated environment. We didn't know what to do. But you were on the computer every day, doing a YouTube and whatever, interacting with people, the Facebook Live, carrying a message. You also had a thing where you were a leader among other municipalities in terms of what was going on, helping other towns get through the same stuff. And it was a positive, upbeat message. It was a fair message. It was like, this is a serious deal. It was leadership like I never saw before.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Early on, I participated in a Bloomberg School of Public Health. They had periodic meetings throughout the pandemic to advise local government leaders. And one of the things was, if there's a void in communication, you've got to get out there and tell your message. And we've practiced that as a city really strongly, making sure our message was out there and loud and proud. But, in a public health setting, something we weren't used to, that was a little bit different of a focus. So jumping into that and, telling the facts the way telling the facts, and then just providing some hope in a dark time, I think was what people really looked for. I know personally, folks just liked sort of seeing into a public official's life a little bit in a different way than they normally would.
Yeah, I've never been to your house, never been on your back porch, but I can see it.
Yeah, you were there. You were there. Met my creatures.
I can see the beams. I can hear the geese in the background.
That's right. Yeah. So I think, people want to get to know their leaders in a personal way, and I was really, happy to have the opportunity to do that.
And you guys were tough when things needed to be closed, when there was like a shutdown. You made your own decisions. You didn't the county was much more open than you all were. It seemed like, well, Salisbury's overreacting, but you were showing leadership on these things. So it was, you weren't just going with the flow. You were trying to do what was right. That's what I saw.
Yeah, it certainly was, and those decisions weren't easily made. But again, going back to our staff and our residents, that was number one for me. And if God forbid something else like this were to happen again, I'd revert back to that. The rest of the stuff it'll fall into place. There'll be government programs to help folks out, but we can't take back a life.
Okay, unfair question. I'm going to go into a stereotype.
Okay.
She's like, oh gosh, here comes an unfair question. You've shown all these leadership skills. You're so deep in the community. You're doing such a great job. And now you're going to go up and be a faceless bureaucrat in the state government?
Ouch. Well, I hope not. I hope that, I'm going to be engaged in not just Salisbury's community, but communities across the state, and really engage with the local leaders, local organizations on the ground, and give them a voice at a state level, give them, connections to state leaders, because I think, sometimes that's lacking at the state level. So I think community engagement, communications are going to be something for DHCD that I'm going to be focusing on, to make sure that we're approachable, we're reachable, because that's always been something that's really important to me. Locally creating our vulnerable populations task force, making folks, going to the people, meeting people where they are, is something that I think a lot of people realized we needed to do in COVID, and that can't go away just because, there's not a health crisis anymore.
Good, that helps me, because I say faceless bureaucrats, that's a stereotype, but the faceless bureaucrats I know are all really hardworking people who are committed and trying to do a good job, and they get this label put on them, which is so unfair. The Here's Home stuff that Jake worked on, that you worked on with him when you were here, again, one of those things where you identify a problem, offer a solution. You think the private sector should handle that, and it shouldn't be a governmental thing, but there's way more to it than that.
There There was, sometimes you just need a little extra push. We're in a tough market here. I was having a conversation yesterday with some legislators about some state aid for a project downtown. We're a tertiary market in a lot of ways for development, so they can go someplace else and get a higher return. So why are they going to choose Salisbury if we're not giving them just a little extra boost? Not
Sure.
giving away the farm, or whatever that saying is. But we've got to get creative. If they're not coming, there's a reason for it. So why not get a little innovative and try something new and see if it sticks?
And in Maryland, there's so many opportunities with the suburban Maryland in the D.C. area, Baltimore City certainly, and all the rural hamlets. There's so many opportunities to improve housing.
There are, and every situation is going to be a little bit different, I think. We had a Lower Eastern Shore Mayors Association meeting a couple weeks ago, one of Jack's first, public events, and we had mayors there from, Ocean City, which was great to have them in the room, as the big guy in the room. Us, normally we're the largest group on the Eastern Shore that's really participating in those kind of meetings. But you had a Hurlock in there, a Mardella Springs, and we're talking about housing, and those are all very different communities. So the solution has to be a little bit different. But Hurlock was getting excited about a 64-unit complex, and we're here talking about the Ross.
Right.
So it's all scalable, I think. But every income level has to be focused on, because there's not enough housing for all levels, and then there's no one housing type. I think we talk about homeownership as the solution, and yeah, of course we want to get more people into homeownership, but there's lots of other options out there for folks.
Help me with this one. On our website in this last week, certainly the Ward Foundation coverage got tremendous viewership, but the little Lot 10 story, the city sells Lot 10, which is the parking lot on Route 13, Calvert Street in downtown Salisbury. The idea is to put a conference center hotel there. And the comments, the viewership, everyone's like, well, where are we going to park? What are they going to do? This is a mistake. How could this happen? This is the worst thing that's ever happened. And you think, okay, people have thought this through and they're progressive and they're starting to get it. And then that happens and you realize that they don't get it at all. You must deal with that all the time.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And sometimes I want to write back, but I think better of myself. I think we need to slow down and try to bring people along a little bit. But change is scary for folks. Thinking about a high-rise hotel is different for a lot of folks. And I don't know where all those commenters are coming from, if they're in the city limits or if they're outside and are used to more of a rural style of living.
And they're all people who mean well.
Yeah, of course. But we are an urban center, and I think folks just have to recognize that, and we've grown really fast in a short period of time, and maybe it's just the speed at which we're moving here that's confusing folks or getting them nervous. But we're going to overcome the parking challenges, and those it will likely involve parking garages. Again, if you're used to flat parking, that'll be a change, but that's the way we have to operate when we're dealing with limited real estate on the ground, and you've got to go up. We have a dramatic need for more hotels. We have a dramatic need for conference space and that type of conference space. So it just makes sense. The hospital's on board with it, SU, the county, Purdue. We need it to keep growing Salisbury, to keep bringing top talent here, and it's going to provide 50 jobs annually for folks. So that's a good thing.
And this is capitalism work. You've got a developer who's going to a bank who believes in the business plan, who's going to give you the money to hire the contractors to build the building, to operate this thing. The city is just providing the stage.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks don't understand, government's role and think that we're more involved than we actually are. When we're talking about the Ross, they're like, well, why aren't you building low-income housing? It's, well, it's a private development.
Right.
We can't control it. We can incentivize things, and we're doing that. But again, if the market's not there, and we can't do anything about it to a certain extent. But we've provided the space, and again, if being that tertiary market and needing to get certain returns for investors, again, any smart business person needs to make a return. We don't want them, making too much off our backs, and they're not in this case. But if private development was going to happen without a little bit of support from the government, it would have already happened. So
Right.
We're just trying to kick it into high gear here.
Yeah, and not go too deep in the woods. I just remember 20 years ago, Frank Hanna bought the tract down at the Port of Salisbury for Harpoon Hanna's.
That's a good point.
Paid $150,000 for it. Everyone was outraged that he'd ripped off the city because he got $1 million piece of property for 100. Well, why didn't you bid on it? Why didn't you put a group together and bid? Why was Frank Hanna the high guy at 150?
Yep.
And now you've got basically an institution down there that's completely changed the theme of what happens there.
That's a great point, and I forget about Brew River. And looking at Lot 10 or any one of the other lots, right now it's especially Lot 10, it's half full of cars, so we don't need that much parking right there right now, and it's not earning any income. It's not earning any tax revenue for the city because it's our property. So, would you rather earn nothing? Or have millions of dollars over time come back to the city? It makes sense to me.
Yeah, and what was there had failed, so the city had to take it over, tore down whatever was there, and it was just waited to build on it again. Someone said to me, like, well, where are we going to have the craft fairs now? I'm sure we will find a place to have the craft fairs.
Yeah, we're committed to working with the A&E district to find the flea market a new home, and I think it can make a lot more sense and support businesses if it's on Main Street or Division or wherever it ends up being. But
they're not a reason to maintain that parking lot.
We want to maintain them, and there's value in that, but I think we'll get a higher return with a different use.
So in your career track, you've got now this great. You worked in state government. Now you've been in local government. You're going to be in state government again. What are you going to do? What's next for you after this?
I don't know.
I always get the feeling you're one of these people with a blueprint, that you get it all mapped out to 62.
It's funny. I don't know if it was when I was at city government, early on in my career here, or before that, and somebody asked me what I want to be when I grow up. And at one point I had mentioned being a secretary of an agency.
Really?
Yeah, and I forgot about it, and then it just popped up in my head a couple weeks ago that I had thought that, because I was busy with my head down here, not looking for anything different, happy with making progress here in Salisbury. But it's interesting that sort of just came to fruition. But beyond that, I just need to figure out, what I'm doing up there, what kind of, opportunities we can create for Marylanders. That's what I'm going to be focused on for the foreseeable future.
Why do you love Salisbury? You don't have to. I mean, the rest of us are sort of stuck loving it. Why does Julia Glanz love it?
I don't think we're stuck having to love it.
Yeah.
It's something special. I think we've talked about it before, and I've used this anecdote. When I was a student, I started getting involved off campus with Jim Ireton and other groups initially. And if you put yourself out there for Salisbury, it's going to wrap its arms around you. And, this community is really strong. It looks out for one another. It's so nice to be able to walk down the street and, know your neighbors and know your colleagues out there. And I'm sure that exists in other communities, but it's a kind community. It's a welcoming community. And it's just special.
All right, make us feel better about what we were left with here. We all love Andy Kitzrow, who's going to succeed you, and then Tom Stevenson's coming back to help out in the interim. Gosh, I've known Andy since he was a kid in high school, protesting the tax,
the revenue cap,
on the front page of the Daily Times. Now he's going to be our city administrator. So what are you leaving us here with?
Strong folks. Andy has one of the biggest brains you will ever know. His heart is good. He talks really fast. His brain moves really fast. So just tell him to slow down a little bit. But he's gonna do incredibly well in this role. And Tom, oh my gosh, Tom taught me everything I know in this role. So you're in good hands there. He's one of the kindest people, and he's so excited to get back to work with us. But like you said, Tom's role is temporary. We're going to do a search for that role, after the next election, to make sure that we've got the right person in that role long term.
And how is our police chief thing going to go?
So we have secured a search firm to help with that process. We want to cast a net far and wide to manage that process, make sure we're marketing ourselves in the strongest light that we can. It's not just about them selling themselves. We've got to sell ourselves. So the search firm, they say their process takes anywhere from 3 to 5 months. So I anticipate that being wrapped up at the latest at the end of August, and depending on where the chief is coming from, starting anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months after that. So Dave Mindshine, who's our colonel right now, he'll be stepping up if there's a gap in any time. And Dave has done this once before. He's fantastic. He's been with the PD 35 years. We're in good hands there. And across the board, city leadership is strong. Council is in a great spot. All of our department heads are really strong and finding their footing. The newer ones are doing a really great job, and 450 plus employees that are committed to this community. We're in good hands.
Do you feel the pressure of, if things go well once you're gone, that will be more of a testament to your success than anything else?
I don't know. It's once I get out of here on Friday, it's going to be weird looking in from the outside. I know everything's going to go well. They're strong.
Will you come back and talk to us sometime?
I'd love to.
You won't pretend, not like everyone else, they pretend they've never heard of me when I call.
Craig,
You'll
I've got the same number. Call me.
Joey Glanz, thank you for your service to the city of Salisbury and all of us. We wish you so well, and we're happy for you, and we're mad at you at the same time. But go do great things, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Greg Bazzer from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.